To fine-tune or not to fine-tune? That is the question. And right now, 90% of entrepreneurs, business owners, and companies are doing it wrong. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars to give AI a PhD in something it already has a master's degree in. Naturally, fine-tuning sounds very sophisticated, elegant, and fancy. But here's what most don't realize. Most of the time, you're teaching a model something it already knows. Or worse, something you're gonna have to unteach it in 5 to 6 months. It's like hiring a Shakespeare expert to teach Shakespeare how to write like Shakespeare. So today, I'm gonna walk you through my mental model and decision framework that I personally use to determine whether or not fine-tuning makes sense. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to better understand whether or not you need to focus on prompting, RAG, or fine-tuning is actually worth the investment. Let's get into it. So when someone on a paid consult or someone in my community asks the question, should I fine-tune this model for XYZ use case? I'll usually point them toward this pyramid, which myself and my agency prompt advisors put together. And the way it works is actually pretty simple. So at the very bottom, the foundation of civilization is prompt engineering. And most times you can derive a lot of value and a lot of hidden value that you don't even know language models are aware of, and then not have to do anything else. But if you feel like you've tried every single model and you need some additional context or a mini knowledge base of sorts to keep your prompts on track, then it could make sense to do what's called context dumping, which is taking a language model with a very large context window. Think of Gemini 2.5 Flash or Pro or GPT 4.1 Mini or Nano that have a million context window. And if this is still not good enough, you have retrieval augmented generation, and within RAG, you have many layers of RAG you can use before you actually have to ascend to the very top of fine-tuning. In most of the cases we see, 90% shouldn't be fine-tuned. And from everything myself and my team have seen, around 90% of cases usually don't need any form of fine-tuning. But there are some valid 10% use cases where, whether it's security related or company IP related, it could make sense. Back in 2023 and early 2024, it made way more sense to fine-tune because language models themselves just weren't where they needed to be in a lot of areas. One of the most common areas was JSON or JavaScript object notation, where outputting code or outputting payloads from a backend using a language model was so inconsistent that fine-tuning made sense, and training it on what that payload should look like, all the syntax it should adhere to over time, made a lot of sense. But now you have things like structured output, which makes sure this doesn't happen. And in general, you have much smarter language models that are inherently and natively better at this. And then we had other things like tool use and code generation, as well as reasoning, where before we didn't have reasoning models, but now we have things like O1, O3, O4, we have DeepSeek, we have different versions of DeepSeek. So a lot of the core need to have to fine-tune are not there anymore. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of these models already inherently know a lot of the information that you're fine-tuning for. So when it comes to doing things like legal, medical, academic, writing in the style of dead authors or dead artists, a lot of this stuff already lives in the model itself. And one of the million ways you can test this is if you ask a language model, can you write this piece of information in the style of Shakespeare, Elon Musk, and Gordon Ramsay, and you combine them all together, it understands inherently in its corpus of training all of those different styles from all the snapshots of millions of pieces of text it's ingested over time. So in the same vein, I've met with multiple people who have fine-tuned or over fine-tuned a model for something that actually inherently exists in the language model training itself. They might look at this and say you have objections because your specific case makes perfect sense, and it might. Now, one of the most common use cases that I do get is around brand voice, where I ask the question, and I'll go to it here. I actually call it the brand voice evolution trap. Do you think that your brand voice will stay the exact same for the next 1, 2, 5 years? Because realistically, the way I speak now is different from the way I spoke a year ago, which is different from the way I spoke 5 years ago. Just take a look at my older YouTube videos. Actually, no, please don't. But the way I even articulate myself, the words I use, the analogies I refer to are a lot more basic than now, where I've had more reps at actually speaking online and getting that feedback loop from you. In the same way, if you were to fine-tune one of the most common use cases, I have 5,000 pages of me writing and reading. I want to now make this a fine-tuned model so that I can always just tell it, write this essay or write this blog post, and it will always sound like me. And again, I'll say, For 6 months, maybe a year, this will be an awesome model. But what happens if you want to change your style? Do you want to go back and retrain? How are you going to retrain? Are you going to retrain with everything from before, and then now you add a stratified sample of the new version of you're trying to be? Or are you going to try to do some prompt engineering to that fine-tuned model to make it adapt to the new version of you're trying to be in the future? If you're not on the technical side of things or less tech savvy, then you can trap yourself with a fine-tuned model where all the models are advancing. All of them would actually understand better over time if you uploaded 2 documents how to mimic your style. But now because you've planted some roots, you're stuck and you've sunk time and money to make it work. And one example is if you look at the Twitter profile of any conglomerate company, any large company, you're going to see messaging 10 years ago is very different from messaging now, where they're trying to adapt to the cool kids, the new lingo, the new jargon of the day. So imagine they ran their entire X or Twitter account using a language model trained on millions of tweets from before, and now they're trying to adapt to a new audience. This wouldn't work. Now, initially I've spoken to what doesn't make sense, but let me touch on what could make sense. So one use case that makes perfect sense is if you are a SaaS company or you run a SaaS company that's kind of an LLM wrapper, where your entire business has some bells and whistles on the product front, but at the end of the day, the foundation of your app is a language model. And a really good example of this are vibe code apps, where now there's thousands of different versions of them. Many of them depend on Claude 4 or Claude 4 Sonnet to actually generate the code. One thing I've heard of over time is some of these companies taking open source models, training them on vibe coded code and frameworks, and the best way to go from 0 to 80% in under 3 minutes, so that they have 1, their own moat, 2, their own dependencies that they don't have to worry about Claude tomorrow shutting down access, increasing their prices, or even having a model misfire or degrade. And by nature of that, their product would degrade, but their customers don't care who to blame. It would be them to blame. And I've also heard this for voice agent companies as well, where initially, before voice agent technology advanced to the point we're at today, they took models and fine-tuned them to be a lot better at having conversations that we have colloquially on the phone versus a text generation through something like ChatGPT or Claude. And another use case that makes perfect sense is volume-based arbitrage, where you have so much inference, you're sending so many messages in the millions that it doesn't make sense, even with the cheaper closed source models, to run it versus you having your own open source model that you host on a server. And once you do that math, it adds up. The one main thing I'd note here is, depending on how your business works, if you need instant responses from language models, then this would make even more sense. But let's say you could actually queue up these responses or have them sent the next day. You could look into something like a bulk API, where you send 50, 100 messages at once, and then you get a nice 40 to 50% discount off of your cost. And the next one is a very common one that's justified, where there's compliance. You have GDPR, you have HIPAA, you have ISO, whatever it is. You could be in an industry where even hosting a language model on a cloud, on something like AWS, Bedrock, or Azure, still might not be good enough. If that is the case, then it could make sense to fine-tune something like a Mistral or a Llama for that specific use case, so that you have full control and you have a lack of security audits. One thing I would say on this though is that these companies like AWS, Bedrock do allow and do work with some of the largest healthcare providers in the world. So if you are in a gray area where you have clients, you have stakeholders, you have colleagues that are concerned, they literally publish a list of every single company they work with. And then the last one here relates to my first point, where you could build some form of a moat. So let's say you have tons of proprietary information, tons of proprietary data that isn't readily available online. The language model companies haven't managed to acquire or purchase it, or maybe it's impossible to acquire without your specific moat. So in that case, if you have something genuinely proprietary and it doesn't make sense to do RAG on those 50,000 documents because there's something stylistically different, there's information that is hidden from the world, or at least hidden from the language model, that's there that you wouldn't find anywhere else, then yes, it could make sense. One more category where you could use fine-tuning is where you have static information that can't change. A good example of this, like Exhibit A, was someone last week reached out to our agency asking whether or not we could help build a service or a SaaS platform to enable someone to upload the messages, books, anything from a loved one that's deceased, and fine-tune a model to sound like them. In this case, there's not going to be any form of brand new information. So given that, you could fine-tune a model because that voice should not change. And moving on to regulatory. If you are in the legal space and there's some form of legal adherence or some form of verbiage or statutes that you have to adhere to every single time or a specific style, then it could make sense. And for the last one, I referenced this before. If by some miracle there's a creator or artist that is completely unknown to the world, where they don't exist in the language model data, I would triple, quadruple check in multiple ways, not just by their name, but also by the name of their works, by a copy paste of a snippet of their works and asking it, do you know where this is from? And kind of pulling on that thread, because sometimes due to copyright issues, these language model companies have to keep it very well hidden. So once you verify that it's genuinely not there, then this could also be a good application. So if you are assessing this either for yourself, for a client, for your team, so if you want something structured like a checklist to audit whether or not, one, it makes sense to fine tune, and two, whether it still makes sense to fine tune if you've already done it, this could be a good set of questions. And I'll make this available to you in the second link in the description below, and it will include this really nice mermaid diagram that I'll show you right after. So first thing is relevance check. Has our business model shifted? Have customer expectations changed? Are base models now doing X natively? So again, before, models couldn't do something like JSON very well, but now they do. So have models changed where your fine-tuned model that you're paying inference for to host the open source models and maintaining those models and adding to them, is it still worth it? And then if you were to put the fine-tuned model head to head with the newest base model that is affordable at scale, would the fine-tuned model still outperform on that use case that you used to originally justify it? On the economic review side, this is one of the most important things to look at, which is, let's say we have Claude 6, and Claude 6 is brilliant, but also very cheap. In that case, would it still make sense for you to fine tune? And again, if it's related to compliance, then probably the answer will still be yes, but in many other cases, it won't. And the last part, if you ask yourself very honestly, 1 year, 2 years down the line, let's say you trained a model or fine-tuned a model on company data and it's super proprietary. You have to ask yourself, with everything that's inevitably going to advance in the next couple of years, is it still such a competitive advantage that it's worth maintaining and pursuing? And then if not, it makes sense to run the numbers as to whether or not it would make more sense to switch to whatever language model API we have in the future. And if you're newer to the concept of fine-tuning, I actually made a video about fine-tuning a while ago that was actually pretty decent, and it shows you exactly how to do it, at least at the lower scale using OpenAI. But other providers, if you were interested, include Azure OpenAI. You have AWS, like I said, AWS Bedrock, which has a partnership with Claude. And I think Amazon is invested in Anthropic as well. And then you have Hugging Face, which is the mecca of open source models, where you'll find all kinds that are quantized, meaning they've been compressed. So if you're looking for a certain type of model with a certain type of size, odds are you can find it there. And then you have something like Together AI that also allows you to host a model. You can own the IP of that fine-tuned model, and then you can run inference and connect to it. And I have this mermaid diagram to walk you through a mental model of the steps here of whether or not you're processing this many tokens per month. If so, do you have specific requirements like regulatory? If yes, can you dedicate 2+ engineers for 6 weeks to go from 0 to a fine-tuned model with your kind of data? If so, you keep following the breadcrumbs here. And this is not a rule in the space, everything that you'll see here. This is just something that's worked for us after seeing tons of different cases with hundreds of businesses. And that's pretty much it. I just want to touch on this to save you potentially a lot of time, a lot of anguish and suffering, and most importantly, money. If this helped you in any way, shape, or form, let me know down in the comments below and give a like to the video. It helps me, helps the channel, helps everything. And if you want to see even more topics related to prompt engineering, fine-tuning, and pretty much anything around generative AI and actual implementation of Gen AI in businesses, then check out my Early AI-dopters community, the first link in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.